Hi everyone, it's Katie from Moonflower Moments. Today I thought I'd hop on here and talk about one of the ways that I build spreads. So I know a lot of people use oracle cards to build spreads, and I do that occasionally as well, but as someone who is an English teacher, I do look for inspiration from literature as well. So I wanted to hop on here and show you one of the easier ways to build a spread from literature that's really accessible, and that is nursery rhymes. So I don't know about y'all, but usually when I use spreads that are pre-made, I have a difficult time remembering the card position. So by the time I get into like card 4, I've already completely forgotten like what the positions were for 1 through 3. So one of the ways that I thought to come up with this is to make the positions rhyme or to take inspiration from rhymes that already exist. So nursery rhymes traditionally are verses that have been passed down from childhood to childhood through generations. And one of the reasons that they've been passed down is to teach morals, to teach lessons, but also because they're really easy for people to remember. So an example of that would of course be like the famous like Humpty Dumpty fell off a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, the itsy bitsy spider, so forth, so forth. So a lot of them are like ultra popular, like Humpty Dumpty, and then I also pull from some that are less popular, like the Little Wise Owl. But essentially I have a book and I open it up and I look through what there is to see. So I'm going to walk you through today one of the nursery rhymes that I've used recently, which happens to be the Itsy Bitsy Spider. And I'm going to show you a sample spread of how I use the nursery rhyme to come up with a spread. And then I'm also going to show you my nursery rhyme decks, which are going to be all the ones that I consider to be whimsical decks that still are able to teach a lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the poem or the nursery rhyme. My intention was to show you this on my Kindle, but unfortunately it broke today. But I guess that should be fortunately because it broke like one day before the warranty expired, so I should be able to get a new one. So y'all just get my handwriting here. So I'm going to go ahead and read Itsy Bitsy Spider just in case you can't read my cursive half knot. So the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout, down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain, and the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again. So when I typically see this, the words that stick up to me are going to be the rain, which is some sort of like troubling situation that I am facing. And then the sun is something that helps me get through that traditionally like troubling obstacle. And then the next thing I see is like climbed up the spout again. So even though I had issues with the rain and I had issues actually climbing up, let's pretend that I'm a spider because it's a children's rhyme, right? I had a hard time climbing up the water spout because the rain came down, the sun dried up all the rain, and then I tried again. So this is obstacles, this is whatever's helped me push through the obstacles, and this is going to be like how my second attempt will occur. So I would read this rhyme to myself while pulling cards. I'm not going to do that here because I obviously just did it, but I am going to show you a sample spread with the nursery rhymes using, this is Forest of Enchantment. So let's go ahead and pull for the rain. So the rain is whatever obstacle I don't know what I'm trying to say, that I'm currently facing. There we go. So it looks like 10 of Visions. Visions is cups here. I have the Sun, which is Ace of Challenges, which is swords. And I'll explain all of these once I get everything on the table. And how's everything going to turn out when I try again? Keeper of Visions. Actually, I love to see that card because that's my significator. Okay, so as we've already established, this is going to be the rain because I am the spider. The rain is getting me down. This is going to be the sun, something that's helping me to push through that trouble. And then this is going to be like in a predictive sense, like what's it going to turn out like when I try again to get through this obstacle? So it seems like right now I have an idealized version of what family is supposed to look like and what connections is supposed to look like. I need to reach to the sun to bring some mental clarity to that situation. So perhaps like my ideals are too high, my sense of fantasy is too high in terms of like this fantasy family or these connections that I want to make. So I need to have some mental clarity that cuts through this. And when I go to the situation again or approach it again, this is actually the King of Cups, which I think is a beautiful thing. So I'll be approaching it from a more stable place emotionally, and I'll be approaching it with an opportunity to be diplomatic. So we pulled this all just from, you know, the Itsy Bitsy Spider by essentially extracting keywords that could be used to build spreads. So another one that I've done recently is Starlight Star Bright, which is just essentially a child wishing upon a star. So that one was a single card read because the idea of it is essentially, you know, I have this wish, so I'm wishing upon the star tonight. So that one I would just do a single card spread where essentially I ask myself, like, what is something that I'm really hoping for and wishing for? So you can build this spread essentially as long as you want to. It could be 1 card, it could be 2 cards, it could be 3 cards, it could be however many you want. But the idea is to mine the nursery rhyme for words that could be used in spread positions. So that's the basic premise of it. So I'm going to show you some decks that I've been using that have been working out with it, specifically because of their whimsical and yet also practical nature. So I had already briefly showed the Forest of Enchantment. So if you're not familiar with this deck, I think that it is one of the ultimate ones that you can use for this because it is really whimsical in nature, especially when you get into some of the cards that like look like this. This definitely looks like it's coming straight out of like a fairy tale or a folk tale. So it touches on that childhood imagery. You know how you have a dragon here. I think that its fantasy blend really makes it feel like it's appropriate for a nursery rhyme reading, but it can also give things that are very honest and very truthful, as you saw from the reading it just gave me. So that was a real reading. I'm not trying to stage anything. So that being said, this is the Forest of Enchantment. The next one that I have to share is my Insect Obscura. Now, I will confess that I haven't used this one in a reading quite yet, but I think that it's on my to-do list this week to do so. I'm going to leave this deck out on my desk, and I'm not going to put anything else there. So we'll see how it turns out. But this is a very whimsical deck because of the way that the faces are drawn. So I know some of these cards are sideways, but this is essentially a face onto a moth. So there is that sense of whimsy with it that I feel like a child would enjoy. But because it is a tarot deck, and innately is going to try to teach you lessons. So I think that it ultimately does fit in with that concept of that moral teaching part of the nursery rhyme decks. Okay, the next one is going to be Squid Cake. Now, Squid Cake is a Marseille, so I feel like that really fits for the nursery rhymes because it's very straightforward and in your face. Like those little short rhymes, it is concise in its approach because especially with the pips being that it is a Marseille, it says what it needs to say and then it backs off. But with the little creatures and the court cards and the majors, I say creatures, I see them as like cartoons. I think that this will allow you to tap into that inner child place, but still get a very direct and concise reading. The next one I pulled is Tarot of a Moon Garden, and I have actually used this one for my nursery rhyme readings before. It has a fantasy-esque kind of energy to it because of the way that everything is set in a moon garden. And you also have, of course, in the stabs, you have a sense of a forest. So this really does remind me of some of the settings that these nursery rhymes could be sung in, performed in, things like that. When you think of nursery rhymes, you think about like playing with your friends outside, or at least that's what I think of, and maybe having some sort of hand game to go along with it. And so for that reason, it's heavily associated with that because it matches the setting, which is of course very like fantasy-esque, very childlike-esque, but this is a really honest and straightforward reader. I get concise answers from her, so it matches that shortness of the nursery rhymes themselves. The next one I'm going to be brief with. This is going to be my Goblin Market. So the Goblin Markets are absolutely hilarious. We had a rough relationship to start with, and then all of a sudden something clicked for me. But I think that this definitely fits the nature of nursery rhymes, because the two that I shared with you essentially tend to be happier in tone, but many of the nursery rhymes, because they've been passed down since like the 1600s, some of them can be really brutal about like kids not having food, or their parents being very stern with them. The lessons that society thought that I'm still thinking students because I'm a teacher, that kids needed to know, and I guess students as well, during that time period. So I think that like those nursery rhymes can be stern, and the goblins here can be very stern as well. So I think that they match more of the sterner readings that could be used more for shadow work, because they're not the nicest little goblins. All right, here we are with the Funny Little Lizard Tarot. This is a new acquisition for me. Actually just got it in yesterday, but I feel like this would work well for the nursery rhymes, because there are a lot of kids that are absolutely fascinated with the natural world. I know that I was one of them. And so I think that this deck would fit those situations with those kinds of kids, and just tap into like that inner playfulness. Like we have this Knight of Wands here. He's essentially riding on the back of a tortoise, and he has like this worm in his mouth, like he's a victor, right? Like he has won this battle. So it is definitely giving that childhood play that I would say that nursery rhyme decks need to have. So that was the Funny Little Lizards. By the way, guys, I got this for $30 because essentially it was a quote-unquote damaged box, but like honestly the box came in and it was almost perfect condition, and this was also free shipping. So I'm going to leave a link down to her Etsy store because I think this is one that's underrated. The guidebook is really well done. I'm going to talk about it more in my monthly reflections. All right, the next one that I want to share is the Greenwich Tarot. So there is something about nursery rhymes that of course reminds me of just like quintessential English culture and English villages. I think because nursery rhymes were predominantly from England in the 1600s, 1700s, etc. So culturally, I think that this deck matches, because even though it has a bit of a fantasy sense, it does have that feel of like a British village. So I could see that if I sat down to do a nursery rhyme with these, the people that I come across, such as, for example, the King of Wands, the courts are so good in this deck. He would give me advice about just life in general and how to conduct life. I do really feel like the figures in here speak as mentors that would be willing to help children learn as they're exploring the world. So I think for that reason, this would be another one of my nursery rhyme decks. So another one that I wanted to share, just in case you wanted to be like a little bit on the lighthearted side, this is the Secret Garden inspiration cards. So these are absolutely just precious and cute. And I feel like with this like garden background and then also this garden border, that many people could associate it with like the playtime of being a child. So it definitely reminds me of that whimsical play. And even though it is definitely skewed more to the positive side, I do find this to be one of my more honest oracles because of how concise the message is. I think sometimes when you're reading oracle entries, when they go on like 4 pages, 5 pages long, that's not really my vibe, because I feel like I'm just searching in the guidebook for what I want to hear. With this, you can't really argue with something that's so short on the message. So it's concise and it's written in like almost like couplets for most of them, just like a nursery rhyme would be. So this is one of my other nursery rhyme decks. That would be the Secret Garden Inspirations. All right, I have another one that's here on this list because of directly how it relates to me, but it might relate to some of y'all as well. This is going to be the Neopets Tarot. So of course, when I was young, probably the time that I was reading nursery rhymes and also engaging with them, I was definitely playing Neopets. So this is an innate part of my childhood, and I know many people's childhood. So when I sit down to do nursery rhyme readings, I do find myself gravitating towards this. Now, you think that this is going to be like a whimsical reader because of how cute it is, but I will say that in practice, it actually is a very straight shooter. So I've tried to use this for like more fun readings, and I didn't want that. So I would say that it's whimsical on the surface, but in practice, it is very direct, and the guidebook is exquisitely written. The person who created this deck definitely knew a lot about not only Neopets, but also about tarot. So that's one of my whimsical but truth-seeking decks, the Neopets. All right, and next it had to make the list because this was the first deck I ever did a nursery rhyme reading with. This is going to be Serpent and Peacock, the first edition. So, I mean, look at this. This is just an absolutely adorable card for when it comes to whimsical play. So this is the Seven of Swords. I don't really know what the cat's doing, but it's definitely giving whimsical play. Some of the stuff is like quite deep, such as, for example, this tower. But then in the next few cards, you get something that's really like lighthearted, such as, for example, the Hanged Man sticking his tongue out. I mean, if this isn't childhood energy, I don't know what else is. But the fact that it has these very whimsical and funny and just like teasing cards, but then you also pop over, oh, look at this magician. We got to talk about him. This is hilarious. This is definitely whimsical. But then you pop over to the Nine of Coins, and she looks all serious and she looks all regal. I think that it's a deck that is nuanced in its capacity to do both. So for that reason, it is a nursery rhymes deck. It is going to make you laugh, and it is going to bring you back to that childhood heart, but it also has the ability to give you that straight truth the way that you need to hear it. And we'll stop on the Fool, because what a great card to sum up that childlike nursery rhyme imagery. So thank y'all so much. This is something that I do quite regularly, so you'll probably see it pop up into my monthly reflections, and I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you to everybody who watches my videos and makes it and comments and subscribes and leaves likes. I really appreciate y'all being here, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you.